Anyways, so now it's time for me to invite our speakers on stage. And firstly, I'd like to invite on stage the Chief Technology Officer, NPCI, Mr. Saiprasad Nabar. Everybody, welcome, sir, with a big round of applause. And with him, we also have Chief Mobility Solution, who's taking care of UPI and Beam Technology, Mr. Sateesh Palagiri. And I'd like to tell you, we'll be having the Q&A, so you can ask all the questions after this masterclass, not in between, please. Okay, over to you, sir. Over to you.
Good evening and welcome. Good evening and welcome. We are in the exciting times in India where we are developing a lot of digital public good platforms. We are talking about, we have platforms like CoWIN, Aadhaar, GSTN, and then we also have a payment platform, which is UPI, and which is what we are going to discuss, right? So when we talk about UPI in the month of August, we have around 6.57 billion transactions in a month. That is around 250 million transactions a day. And when we talk about 250 million transactions a day, that is the financial transactions, right? And financial transactions, when we announce, it's only the approved financial transaction. But the system is processing around 10 to 15% more. That is around 30 plus crore transactions in a day, which is financial. And also the system processes the equivalent more amount of non-financial transactions. When we say non-financial transactions, it is like balance inquiry, you are doing your account listing, those kind of APIs, right? So when we talk about the scale here, what we are talking about is, in a day, we are processing more than 4 to 5 billion API calls in only the UPI system. This is the scale we are talking about, both including financial and non-financial APIs.
And also to just add, the TPS that we are currently running, it is around 8,000 TPS, and it is all horizontally scalable. So as the volume increases, we will be able to take more load also.
How did we start the journey? Like, when we started the journey and when we had 20 banks launched in the August of 2016, right? Around 2 to 3 months, we were getting 3,000 transactions a day. When we were getting 3,000 transactions a day, we had different sets of problems. Like, how do we reconcile? How do we make sure that all transactions are getting processed? In how much time the transactions are getting processed and all that. Then in 3 months to 6 months time, we moved from 3,000 transactions to 3 lakh transactions. When we moved to 3 lakh transactions, how are we scaling the system? How do we make it more resilient, right? How do we get all the automations in place? Those kind of issues. From 3 lakhs to 3 crores when we moved to, then we had different sets of problems. How do we scale the system? How do we make the system is up and running all the time? Now we are at 30 crores and then we are looking at billion transactions a day, right? For that, how do we scale the system? Right now we have like 2 sites which are in active mode. Like both the sites are processing the transactions all the time, right? So how do we make the system? So our day-to-day job is to keep UPI system up and running 24/7, and then how do we make it more resilient? So at different stages, we have different sets of problems.
Okay. Again, when we say we are resilient, it is not that it is from this. We always test it periodically. Make our system fail. Say we'll shut down one of the load balancer, we'll shut down one of the PU, and we'll see how we will shut down one of the WAF and see how the system performs. So it is not only the important that we have the system in place, but how frequently we check it for failure. Make the system fail. That is our motto, and so that we know the potential issues before some technical risks. So we are not unknown about certain uncertainties. Always make the uncertainties or try for failures. So that is always our motto.
So when in this journey, right, there are few principles that we have adopted which makes the UPI as a platform and like now how we are managing it, right? The first one is interoperable. Interoperable between the banks, the end ecosystem, being able to innovate whatever the new features they want to develop. So interoperable is the first and foremost, unbundle. Like, today our services are like, somebody can provide only a balance inquiry service, right? Payment services are already there, but if somebody wants to do like, so all these services are divided into microservices. Each API is for different purpose, different APIs are defined so that so that the innovations can happen at the end point. Scalability via design, so we are not talking about vertical scalability here. We are talking by design, like, every component that we introduce into the system has to be horizontally scalable. That is what we look at. Resilience, like, everything fails, like, as just now I was told, like, everything will fail, right? Any component can fail. How do you make sure that the system is up and running all the time, if any component fails? Application, be it hardware, be it network, right? Any component fails, UPS service should be available to the customer. The end customer should get the service. That is where we do, like, the system is built for resilience. Privacy and security, this is the most important thing. Be it customer PII or be it the data, transaction data, how secure is it and how much the trust the customer has on the system, right? Trust by design, like, today, whenever you talk about UPI, the customer is able to enter his PIN on a common page across all the apps without any fear. That is what we call as trust, saying that the customer is 100% sure that he is entering the PIN on his device and which is his handheld. He is not entering the PIN anywhere else. Open APIs and standards. Again, we are talking about whenever we introduce a new service and all that, it's all like open APIs, and then anybody can adopt, like, the participants in the ecosystem can adopt these APIs, and then the standards which everybody can adapt easily.
So all our systems, when we are going live or any software, it will always go through a change management process. We will test the performance benchmarking, and all those things are there. We don't compromise on anything. Even from the security, data is there, security and risk, you all know. Because more we add the security, more would be the latency or maybe create in the system. So all changes, whether it is security on this, goes through a change management process, properly performance benchmarking, then it will only go live. And we have a process also in such a way that any patch is there, we will not put in all our systems together. We'll test in one of the PU, check it, then from one, suppose we loaded in one PU, then next day we'll load in 4, and in multiples we'll do that. So that is all, it is not a change management process at one time. We do it over a period of time, and then we complete it.
So we have 3 layers here, which we are talking about, like any acceptance point, and then we have the unified layer, which is accepting all these open APIs, and then we have any form factor, like, be it cards, credit cards, account number, accounts. So that is how the UPI architecture is divided into multiple layers. So we are proud to say that each and every component in the UPI platform is made of open source, right? That is how we are able to maintain the cost of ownership, right? So the system is completely built by using open source software, commodity hardware, and there is no buy-in or lock-in to any specific OEM or any specific hardware, right? So the first one is, what is this giving us, right? Flexibility and agility. When we talk about flexibility and agility today, in all this, in this platform, if any of the component is not performing to our expectation, we can do a small POC. We make sure, like, there are definitely in the open source world, like, everyday enhancements are happening, right? We have Redis, then the KeyDB came in, right? So what happens is, whichever is the latest and whichever is the best proven, right? We need not take the one which is, like, just now launched. What we are talking about is which is already proven and large scale people are using it already. So that we consider, and then we do a small POC kind of thing, making sure that functionality is fitting to our requirement, and then we do a benchmarking, making sure that, okay, this will scale, right? That is how we roll out. That is what I'm talking about, flexibility and agility. And also, for all the open source components that we have, there is enough community support that anyway we can reach out to the community, and then, like, we get the instant solutions. No vendor lock-in, again, cost effective. We work on x86 boxes. The UPI platform works on x86 boxes, and at any point of time, today, as I told, we are at 8,000 TPS. Tomorrow, when we go to 16,000 TPS, we just need to throw more boxes at it. We need not think about saying that whether this is going to scale, application is going to scale or not. It's a constant effort, but by just throwing more boxes, we get to process more transactions. Hassle-free integration. Integrations, again, I'm talking about as the components of the platform are loosely coupled. So basically, any single component can be changed easily, right? Do a POC, do a benchmark, and take it to production. Attracts better talent. This is where everybody has a problem, like, we are using the latest cutting edge technologies. We reach out to the community, and that is where you can attract better resources. Like, what is the excitement for a kid who is coming out of college today, right? He wants to do something new. He wants to do something big, right? And this is where it is secured. In this area also, like, the open source software, there are a lot of open source softwares providing security tools and all that. And it's an evolution, right? Basically, like, it's every day improvements are coming in, right? We just need to be on N-1, that is good enough. But still, every day improvements are coming, and then it's not like, to where we have done this and everything is good. It's not like that. Like, we have to be on the toes all the time and be the latest.
And also we analyze the bank system also. See, we are flexible, that's fine. We also make the bank system also flexible to our. Say, for example, there are meta and financial, which Sateesh talked about. So we can have separate endpoints for the financial and meta. Similarly, we can have separate endpoints for PSP wise. Suppose bank is coming with 3-4 PSPs, we can distribute the traffic. So this architecture not only helps us, it also helps the ecosystem also.
So this is the tech stack that we are using in the UPI platform. It's completely open source, all the components that we are using, and every layer is horizontally scalable, right? Redis, Kafka, Cassandra, KeyDB, a few of them, but we have mentioned all the components here.
And the important thing is we don't know database. Database is only for the reporting or for the regulatory requirement. Even if the database doesn't, our system will work. So that way we have made, there is no database dependency. It is only for the MIS reporting or for the storage of the data for the long period of time.
So what we are trying to tell here is, during the life of the transaction, the 5 seconds or like the transaction is getting completed, during the processing of the transaction, there is no persistence of the transaction. It's all in the in-memory and the transaction goes through. That is how we are able to achieve 2-second, 3-second end-to-end transaction time with having around 20 API calls per transaction. So we are here at 250 million users now. How do we go to the next level? Where do we get from the next 500 million from, right? So we have recently launched a product called UPI Lite, where we have reduced the number of API calls in the transaction, and the shadow account is going to be there. And then that is going to improve the efficiency of the transactions and also give some bandwidth to the banks who can do more on their core banking on our own systems, right? Active is another thing. We used to be active passive, like whenever there is an incident or something, within a minute or two, we used to go to the other side. But now what we have done is both sides are active. They are always up and running and processing transactions all the time. If any of the side goes down, we don't even recognize, and then the traffic automatically shifts to the other side, right? And at 8,000 TPS is what we are talking about. One-touch onboarding, again, like, how do you get partners onboarded onto NPCI platforms, banks? How do you certify them? So it's all like, we are working on end-to-end automation. Right now, it's in progress, right? Where, how fast we can get the banks onboarded onto the NPCI applications, be it UPI or any other applications, right? Be it certification, the standards, and then the compliances, all that we check, and then we get the banks onboarded. Online dispute resolution system, this is again a good initiative by the regulator, saying that any of the transactions which is stuck, like, if we have like, that 99.99% of the transactions are good, but that 0.01% of the customers, if they are not happy, if their transaction is not through, like how fast you are providing the resolution. That is what is this online dispute resolution. Today in the UPI ecosystem, anybody can open their app and then raise a complaint, right? We didn't have that before. In the last 1 year, we did that, and then like there's a directive from RBI that like, all the products, there should be an online resolution for all the products of, all the payment products, basically, right? Proactive performance management, this is one important thing in our daily, around 50% of our time is gone in performance analysis and management, saying that system is here, like at what percentage of utilization the system is here, and how do we take it to the next level, right? Today we are at 8,000, 9,000 TPS in the evening times. Tomorrow during festives or the day going forward, like we are looking at billion transactions a day, right? Billion transactions a day, around 30,000 TPS. Like how do we handle it, right? So that is half of our work goes in that.
So when we say active, it is not only we are active. So we are giving flexibility. So we are processing the traffic at both the sides. So the earlier when we started the system, the RTO was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, go on reducing. But we also thought that RTO 5 minutes is also not there. So we went to active. Also this flexibility gives to the bank also. If they want to send the traffic to both the side, they are also ready. So we are making the big banks ready. So whatever we are doing, when we design it, it is not only for look into for us perspective, but also from ecosystem perspective also.
So what do we look at when we say resilience, right? No single point of failures, like you have the load balancer layer, you have the application layer, you have the persistence layer, you have in-memory layer, right? So any one component failing should not take your system down. That is what we are talking about, saying no single point of failure, right? Active-active, we used to be active-passive, now we move to active-active, right? Multi-site, right? 2 is not good enough. Like if you want to process billion transactions and more, what we are talking about is it cannot be 2 sites, it should be more than that. Fail-safe execution, every day, night, one or the other components will be failed, and then make sure that the system is working fine. In the lean hours, 2 to 5 a.m., 2 to 4 a.m., there is team which is actually performing a fail-safe testing, right? Every day they fail one or the other component of the platform and make sure that it is up and running, right? So that any eventuality in the daytime should not take the services down. The next level what we are looking at is saying that, okay, now we are able to find out and then you are making sure that it's taken care. But how do we take care of the system, like saying that how do it heal itself? Like, no, we are not still there. We are aspiring to be there, right? Yeah.
So even that fail-safe, as I said earlier, when we do fail-safe, it is not only for the application component. It will be for WAF, it will be load balancer. Each route the transaction passes, that each component will make fail. Okay, so now we are doing now we will be automating it completely process without manual intervention, how also system works as a next roadmap.
Monitoring is one important aspect when you are processing 300 million transactions a day. How do you make sure that any failures you are able to find in time and how you are able to patch it, right? The first and foremost thing is reactive monitoring, saying that, okay, something has happened, you are able to find out in the next minute, 30 seconds, and then you actually act for it, right? Second is proactive. Proactive is saying that what can go wrong, what can fail. That is being proactive, and then we constantly work on that. Third is predictive, saying that by this trend, right, at what threshold the system was failing, right? How do we identify that, and how we avoid the situation, right? We work on all the 3 aspects very carefully.
And so also it is not application monitoring. Say for example, WAF is there. It will check from how the WAF sees the application API is performing. So it is not just an application, it becomes a 24/7 monitoring for all the components. And we correlate the incidents also. Whatever WAF we see, whether latency is there in the WAF or latency is there in the application. It is a load balancer. And we do this exercise during we are more interested when it is a peak time. Say for example, 6:30 to 9:30, how the application behaves rather than the non-peak period. So these are all important analysis that needs to be done proactively. So to behave our application in a healthy state.
As I told you, we are right now having 2 sites. We are working towards going to multi-site to add with third, and then when the volumes increase, how do we make sure that we have multiple sites of UPI working and any one site going should not impact the services. Yeah. So operation excellence, when we do this, there is also saying that how are we making sure that we are improving day by day, right? So basically saying that initially what we are doing is in the initial days of system, it was active passive, right? We were doing 1 or 2 settlements in a day, right? So when I talk about settlement, the fund transfer between the banks, right? The customer is getting his funds in IMPS or UPI real time. But when we talk about between the banks, we used to settle once or twice in a day, right? Dispute resolution was offline. Customer goes to his bank. From bank, he goes to the bank, raises to NPCI, and then we go to the issuer bank. So the dispute resolution was working, but it is time taking, right?
So just to clarify, when we say active passive, all over at that time when we started, it was a proprietary database or licensed database. And then also the settlements were once in a day. Dispute resolution was on the TAD base. Okay, it was a long time, chargeback, represent when you were working. and the MIS was just for the reporting perspective. So when we went to the new system, we again converted our settlement system where do it into an open source stack. Then was a real-time integration between the online system and this. So as the transaction comes, it gets settled. So because of that, we were able to do 8 settlement and 24/7/365. So the banks are also benefited, they get the funds immediately. This is the most important near real-time dispute. So of course the customer, when there is a transaction failure, he has to get the funds immediately. So we have implemented this, it is in the process of implementation where the near real-time dispute management will happen. So automatically for the transactions which are not completed, automatically the API would be fired, and the transaction, if it is automatically the beneficiary, if it is not, it would be credited. So all this will happen in a real time. So our aim is to start with 50% of the transaction automatically settled, so that it doesn't go into dispute at all. When it goes to the dispute, it goes for a long period of time. So the near real-time dispute management system, it is called as ODR. We have started that implementation also. And it's automated settlement, means there is no manual intervention. The file is generated, every it gets cycle, it gets post, without any human intervention or without anything. What we aim is an active-active architecture, again for the settlement architecture, re-architecture for the instant settlement. When I say instant settlement, whether I can, instead of 8 settlement, whether I can settle within 1 hour, all the funds, or whether I can settle in half hour, whether I can do instead of 8, 10 settlements, 15 settlements, we are re-architecting the system for that. And the dispute management AIML, so what we offer to the bank is okay. Why their chargebacks are increasing, why their deemed acceptance are increasing. We will use AIML to give a better insight to them.
UPI, we are all very proud of UPI and what it is doing. And then we have a lot to reach, right? We have a lot to do. Right now we are looking at 30 crore transactions, but then we are a long way to go. I think we are ready to take any questions.
Questions, anybody? Yeah, here we have a
I think we can put this. Excuse me, can you mic?
I think you can ask with the other one.
How do you manage new release or patch management for
New release for?
So when you are in active, how do you release? So we do a staggered release. When we talk about this, there's microservices, right? There is balance inquiry, customer onboarding services, balance inquiry is there, and then we have financial servers. So the way we start is we start with non-financial transactions, deploy in one site. Like we have a number of servers, right? For example, we have 20. Example, like you take 25 servers per site, and then like 5 servers taking care of balance inquiry, 5 servers taking care of onboarding. So we start with 1 or 2 servers at a time, right? First day, like our rollout takes anywhere between 6 to 8 days to completely roll out into production, right? That's how we do a staggered release to make sure that nothing goes wrong in production. When we are processing like 70 to 80 crore transactions in a day, we just don't want to deploy everything in one night, right? We do a staggered deployment.
In addition to the staggered, see, because the UPI is not a single system. There is a settlement system that is connected to it, okay? So we always the staggered approach, and we observe it. And also we take the inputs of the bank, because finally if there is something wrong in the online, it impacts the settlement. That is a normal case, okay? So we'll take the inputs from the bank also, whether this patch it worked or not. Then we'll go on migrating to this. So it will be say, today's end servers, it is working fine, everything, no issue. Then n into 2, then again into 2 like that, and we will roll it out.
So another question is like, when you said there is no database persistence during transaction processing, everything is in cache. So once a transaction is processed, how long does it take to reflect that cache data into the real persistence?
Within seconds, like the transaction is processed completely in memory. The transaction in real time goes to the settlement system. Like we have a settlement 2 systems, right? There is an online system which is taking care of real-time transactions where it goes to for the debit, for the credit, and the final confirmation is given. Immediately it is pushed through Kafka to the back office system, right? Back office is where all the aggregation, all the settlement happens. So it's in real time. At the same time, we also persist to the database just for insurance purpose. But then the transaction actually already moves from the online system to the back office system within seconds.
So basically the settlement of this become a maker checker like, okay. If some exceptions are there and this, anyway we'll know in the settlement because always there is a debit and credit. One bank debit, another bank credit. So if something missing is there, some exception is there, it will definitely recorded in the settlement issue. And when we get the feedback, it is not that it, of course there might be a technology glitch, it happens. So we correct it fast to cover that.
Hey, one question in terms of the latency, and this was something I think a couple of sessions back one gentleman asked. Right now, I mean, for obvious reasons, the current entire architecture is on a private cloud. But is there a thought process in terms of moving to a portion of it to the public cloud in order to probably, improve the latency at the far end?
So see, the latency might be reason of the several factors. Okay, so it might be because of the capacity issue. Okay, it might be because of the application code not written properly, or it might be of the some interconnected components that are not working properly. So I don't think in the cloud or private cloud or this, it may become each organization's requirement. When we go by that, we do a proper benchmarking of the application, and we are always 3x from that perspective. Okay, so we build not the capacity of X, we are 3x always. So that always help us to create the exponential growth from this. So of course, there might be a scenario that 3x also exceeds. But that is more we take up, we continuously monitor the business team of this, looks into the volume. So I don't think that for the UPI, as of now, to move into some public cloud of this. If we 3x is ready and we don't know the tools and performance monitoring tools and this, and we have to use the right strategy, I think that situation may not arise.
So we are 700 kilometers apart, right? We have data centers in Chennai and Hyderabad, right? We were active, passive. At any point of time, one site was working. Now, both being active, and then the traffic between the data centers being passed, we have not added more than not more than 5 to 10 milliseconds in the transaction, like in each message processing. So that really didn't hurt. But then it's a policy decision, but I don't think.
And also see always that we have to do a data analysis. As I said earlier, we see what is not good during the non-peak time. Okay, UPI volume is normally peak only, but in the case between 6:30 to 9:30, it will be much higher. So we see how many milliseconds the application is responding during that peak period of time. So all this data only helps us to improve the systems.
Any other questions? No questions? Okay. No questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much.